Hello, welcome to another fantasy football tournament series, number 64. This is Football Pharaoh's favorite National Anthems Cup, where I have taken two teams from each of the six confederations and made a tournament out of them. It's a new concept idea. These are not necessarily the 12 favorite national anthems that I have. I know we talked about this on my live streams. We talk about flags. A lot of you have a very heightened interest in flags, as do I do, as well as national anthems. But I wanted to make it evenly spread out. There are plenty of great national anthems that you don't see here, but I wanted to make it geographically separated to where it was fair, give all confederations some participation. I picked two. So it's 12 teams. It's basically under the old CONCACAF Gold Cup format with three groups of four. The top two teams from each group advance, as well as the two best third-place teams into the quarterfinals. Again, there's two countries from each of the six confederations, so it's split evenly down the middle. The host nation I selected for this is the beautiful New Zealand. New Zealand is the host country. They're seeded into position A1. And like always, all my tournaments, I use the seeding positions and different pots and all that sort of allocation stuff. So let's go through the groups and the participants. In Group A, we have New Zealand, South Africa, Ukraine, and Costa Rica. Group B is Mexico, Ecuador, Tahiti, and South Korea. And Group C is Uruguay, North Korea, Sweden, and Algeria. So, let's jump right in. Opening game between New Zealand and South Africa. I've gone with a 1-0 victory for the host nation, New Zealand, to hit the ground running. South Africa, they're not such a great side. New Zealand are not a great side either, but some recent results for South Africa, including the 0-0 draw against Seychelles, gives me a little bit of doubt. But I am going with a 1-0 victory here for New Zealand. Ukraine versus Costa Rica. I've gone with a high-scoring 2-2 draw. New Zealand versus Ukraine, a 3-0 victory for Ukraine. And Costa Rica versus South Africa. Look, South Africa, they're inconsistent. However, as I mentioned the result against Seychelles, they also beat Nigeria away from home. So they're sort of an unpredictable second-tier African side. And it's actually a difficult group, more difficult than it appears on paper. I'm going with a victory here for South Africa by a scoreline of 1-0. Just 1-0 for Bafana. South Africa versus Ukraine and Costa Rica versus New Zealand. I've gone with a victory for Ukraine. Another shutout, 2-0 victory. And then Costa Rica versus the host nation, New Zealand. Costa Rica has to get a victory here, and they do so late on, 1-0 in stoppage time to get the victory. So you have half the games in this group ending in 1-0. Not very, very many goals overall. So Ukraine tops the group with 7 points. Costa Rica comes in second with 4 points. South Africa comes in third with 3 points. New Zealand comes in last, also with 3 points. So everyone in this group wins a game at least once. Now, New Zealand did beat South Africa in the opening game, but the tiebreaker here in this tournament, as with all my tournaments, is goal difference. And overall, even though South Africa lost to New Zealand, they finish ahead of New Zealand via goal difference. So Ukraine on 7 points, Costa Rica on 4. South Africa on 3, New Zealand on 3. So New Zealand would be out, and South Africa would have to wait to see if they advance as one of the best third-place teams or not. Moving on to Group B. Mexico versus Ecuador, going with a 2-1 victory for El Tri over La Tri. And Tahiti versus South Korea, I am going with a 6-0 victory for South Korea. Mexico versus Tahiti, 9-0 for Mexico. And South Korea versus Ecuador. Well, I will say a... that's hard. A goal fest here. 3-3. A high-scoring 3-3 draw between South Korea and Ecuador. Ecuador versus Tahiti. I'm going to go with a 4-0 victory for Ecuador. And then South Korea versus Mexico. They met each other in the World Cup. I'm going to say a 2-2 draw. South Korea lost to Mexico in the World Cup. They'll get a result here. 2-2 draw. So the group will finish with Mexico on 7 points, South Korea on 5 points, Ecuador on 4 points, Tahiti in last with 0 points. So Tahiti would be eliminated. And because Ecuador finishes ahead of South Africa with more points, the other third-place team, they advance to the quarterfinals. Moving on to Group C. Uruguay versus North Korea. Going with a 5-0 victory for Uruguay. And Sweden versus Algeria, a 2-1 victory for Sweden. Uruguay versus Sweden, a very gritty 0-0 draw. 0-0 draw. And Algeria versus North Korea, a 3-1 victory for Algeria. North Korea versus Sweden and Algeria versus Uruguay. A 2-0 victory for Sweden. And a 2-0 victory for Uruguay. So Uruguay tops the group with 7 points. Sweden with 7 points as well, but with Uruguay with the better goal difference. Algeria in third with 3 points. North Korea in last with 0 points. North Korea's out. And Algeria finishes with an overall better goal difference than South Africa does in Group A. Therefore, the Fennec Foxes go to the quarterfinals. So, let's get to the quarterfinals. In the quarterfinals, we have Costa Rica versus Sweden, Ukraine versus Ecuador, Mexico versus Algeria, and Uruguay versus South Korea. So, Costa Rica versus Sweden. I've gone with a... penalties after a... No, I'm gonna say 1-1, and then Sweden wins on penalties over Costa Rica. Ukraine versus Ecuador. I'm gonna say 1-1 after 90 minutes, and Ukraine scores the winner 2-1 in extra time. Mexico versus Algeria. A 1-0 victory for Mexico. Uruguay versus South Korea. South Korea will take the lead early on. Uruguay will come back to win the match 3-1. They'll come from behind 1-0 to win 3-1. Moving on to the semifinals. We've got Sweden versus Ukraine, Mexico versus Uruguay. So, Sweden versus Ukraine. Two teams that have been promoted to League A of the UEFA Nations League from League B. That's hard, but Sweden. I think Sweden will come through. And this will be just a 1-0 victory. Yeah, after 90 minutes, 1-0 victory for Sweden. So Ukraine's going to the third place match. Mexico versus Uruguay. I'm going to go with a 4-2 victory for Uruguay here. They played recently in a friendly where Uruguay were victorious 4-1. But here in a competitive game, I'm going to go 4-2. But don't let the scoreline deceive you. It's a very competitive match, this one. Yeah, a high-scoring 4-2 victory for Uruguay. So that gives us the third-place match of Ukraine versus Mexico for the bronze medal. And I'm going to go with a 2-1 victory for Mexico here. So Ukraine will finish in fourth. Mexico will get the bronze medal. Nope. Yeah, Mexico will finish in third. And the final will be a rematch from the group stages between Sweden and Uruguay. That match ended in a 0-0 draw. So they're meeting again. First one was a stalemate. Two World Cup quarterfinalists, Sweden and Uruguay. And the winner here I have is Uruguay, with Edinson Cavani scoring the winner 1-0. 1-0. So Sweden comes in second. Uruguay wins the National Anthems Cup. So Uruguay wins the tournament. Sweden in second. Mexico in third. Ukraine in fourth. Leave a comment below. Like, subscribe. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow or in the coming days, God willing. Have a good night, everybody. Much love. Peace out.